members, ladies and gentlemen, it has just gone 8 o'clock. I would like us to start our meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. This is the meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts of the Provincial Legislature of the Western Cape. The purpose of the meeting is to look at the annual report of the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport, together with its entities, which is the Language Committee, as well as the Heritage Western Cape. We will also be looking at the Auditor General's report, as well as the audit committees of the department, as well as of the two entities. The first session of the meeting, which is starting now at 8, is going to be an in-committee and therefore a confidential meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts for the purposes of being briefed by the Auditor General and the Audit Committee of the department, as well as the audit committees of the entities. So as it is an in-committee, no members of the public as well as members of the media are allowed in the meeting. The meeting is solely for committee members and members of the provincial legislature who chose to attend the meeting, as well as the audit committee and the Auditor General. Now, with that said, honorable members, can I get an indication from the procedural officer whether are there any apologies?
Good morning, Chairperson. Mornings, members. Chairperson, the only apology that I received was from Member Peter Mare, who indicated he won't attend this morning's meeting.
Thank you very much, procedural officer. If that then is in order, honorable members, can I hand over to the Auditor General and the Audit Committee to take us through the Auditor General's report of the department as well as of the entities. Like it's normally the norm, we'll just like the Auditor General just to talk through the report and raise those pertinent issues that they think that needs our attention. Auditor General.
Good morning, Honourable Chairperson and Honourable Members. Audit
Annual report of the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport together with the report of its entities, which is the language committees as well as the heritage and cultural committee of the Western Cape. Including in this annual report, there is also the Auditor General's report as well as the Audit Committee report of the department as well of the entities. Now, this is a open public meeting of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts, meaning that it is open to the public and is also open to the media. And when we have allowed members to ask and exhaust questions to the department and to the entities, we will also allow members of the public who are present at the meeting or who is logged in to ask questions or point of clarity. Now, in starting the meeting, let me make use of this opportunity to welcome the department led by its political head, the minister, as well as the HOD leading the staff, and also word of welcome to the entities that are falling within the department. You are welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Minister, are there any opening remarks that you'd like to make, Madam?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to everyone. At this time, no opening remarks. Just thank you for your time for this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. HOD, are there any opening remarks you'd like to make?
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning to the members. Thank you very much for inviting us here this morning. I think we are available in terms of going through the process. And maybe just to say that for the year under review, we spent more than 98% of our budget. We got an 8 clean audit in a row, you know, and we achieved 101, I think, out of 105 performance indicators. So we feel we had a good year, but we are available here now to present ourselves to the committee. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, HOD. Now, honorable members, I am going to allow then discussions, questions, points of clarity on the annual report, as well as the Auditor's General report and the Audit Committee's report on the department and to the entities. We are all going to deal with the report concurrently, but we are going to deal with it in sections or part as they are. We'll first, as we are all aware, that we'll be dealing with section C and section E of the report. We are going to start with section C, and it's in various pages in the department as well as to the report of the entities. Can I get an indication from members, those who would like to ask questions on the report on section C of the department, of the entities as well? Can I get an indication of questions? Honorable Barnes, Honorable Maseko, in that order. Honorable Barnes.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, my first question will be to the department on page 139, under the table at the bottom. For the year under review, PFS issued a case movement certificate for the department, noting the following. What I want to know is that what was the allegations about and what the details of the finding and cause and the action that is taken. And then my second question to the department will also be on page 141 under the portfolio committees of the one of the 13th September. What are these challenges that are causing incurrence of irregular expenditure? And was there any remedial action taken? Now, my second question, Chair, will be to the entities heritage on page 56. Under the heading that says the key risks considered addressed during the year.
Chairperson.
Right.
sorry, Chairperson.
Is HOD.
Sorry to interrupt. Member Barnes is going very fast and we're between 4 documents here. So if she can just
Okay.
switching between documents now. If she can say heritage, what page of the heritage report?
Apologies, HOD. Let me go a bit slower. That is now
thank you.
page 56
56.
of heritage. The key risks considered and addressed during the year. Loss of heritage resources. What I want to know, HOD, Chair, is what are the details of heritage resources, if any, were lost during the year? Can the committee be furnished with details of actions taken and plans that were adopted including details of local authorities granted competence to manage heritage resources? My second question will be on page 62. Under the BEE compliance performance information, developing and implementing a preferential procurement policy. Does this mean, therefore, that the province is not compliant in this 2017 regulation? What are the implications of this? Now, my last one on the entities will go to the language committee on page 28. The key risks considered and addressed during the year. The appointment of an accounting authority and fully representative of WCLC management continues to manage the risk. Can we get an indication as to what progress has been made thus far? Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, from the entity, the heritage, I just want to find out in page 61 about the department. It said during the various engagements between senior management and employees of the department, employees were reminded about the departmental sexual harassment policy and the process to follow when reporting such conduct. I'm just interested to hear from the department because of always the issue of the sexual harassment policy. There's some blurry lines in that sometimes when an employee has to report, it has to be investigated, and sometimes you'll find that it falls through the holes that it doesn't get attended to. So I want to find out if there has ever been the cases in the department that was reported, and then what was the outcome. The second one, it will be the clarity because of, and this is a department that is correctly so in front of us to say, traditionally, the blacks, or I can say the Africans, the way of Ugushela, I don't know if they will understand, of wooing a woman, it will be sing praises, and then you have to go on and on again as a man to try to win that woman. Sometimes it's not acceptable, but it's a culture, it's a tradition, how they do it. So how does the department, if that might be the case that they get to deal with a situation like that within their working area, how are they going to deal with that? Or what is it in their sexual harassment policy that is in front of them? And it will be that I will love if we can have that copy of that also after they explain to us how do they handle with that. And the second one, it will be the one that I asked of in page 58 under the 5.5 on the key emerging risks for the following financial year, because they listed the possibility that council or committees could take decisions that are ultra biased. So I want to find out from the department that my understanding is there is a framework that the council or the committee should operate in, or the regulation or policy or whatever that is there in place for them to operate within those boundaries, that something, there won't be any decision that they take that it can be untowards to the department or to the entity. So if they list this and not say what are the mitigation plans that for them to be proactive, what is it that is making them to list that and not indicate, because they identify that this is how they feel they have to implement that or something, to list something that will be counteracting for this not to happen within the department or any other entity within the department. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson, should we try and answer those first?
No. What we normally do, HOD, we get all the questions, jot them down, and then we'll allow a session of you answering. Honorable Kama, Honorable Van Vogel after that.
Thank you very much, Chair, and greetings to all members and the committee. Chair, my first question would be on the heritage Western Cape on page 62, where it talks about triple BEE compliance performance information, and where it starts with developing and implementing a provincial procurement policy. I just want to understand there, Chair, whether does this therefore mean the province is not compliant with this 2017 regulation, and perhaps get an understanding of what are the implications therefore. But on the very same heritage Western Cape Chair, on page 51 and 52, I think it lists the number of committees and members of the committees for the year 2016 to 2019, and I think on 52 it's the year 2019 to 22. Now I just want the department to give us perhaps a more understanding of how these committees are constituted, and how do we make sure that some of the people we put in these committees do not have interests that are conflicting perhaps with the mandate of the entity, or can we be assured that in these entities, in these committees, you don't have people who perhaps might be sitting in these committees for other interests than those of the entity itself? The other question I have, Chair, is on the Western Cape. Sorry, it's on the Western Cape Cultural Commission. On page 40, when it talks about the key emerging risks for the following financial year, there it says the key emerging risk which needs to be considered in the next financial year relates to the entity's ability to continue and recover its business during and after COVID-19 pandemic. So if we can get an understanding of how has COVID-19 affected the functioning of the entity, and how this risk is addressed, and perhaps has the entity deliberated on poor consultations on key decision making regarding key cultural practices in the province, or should I say, how do we ensure that we have a consultative process? Because an example what one would make is the issue of the summer initiation in the province. I know that would have happened after the period which we are reviewing now, but I'm just making it as an example as to how do we ensure that there is that extensive and proper consultation with the structures that are in the province. The other question that I have, Chair, is on the department on I think it's general, Chair, with all the entities, this one, with the department also, is to check how do we ensure that members attend or meetings, whether it's people who are in the enterprise risk management and ethics committee. How do we ensure maximum attendance of members, and is there a consequence for people who do not attend these important meetings? Thanks for now, Chair.
Honorable Kama, attendance to what? Attendance to meetings of the Heritage Board, or?
No, thanks, Chair. I meant the meetings of the enterprise management and your ethics committees. Yes.
Okay. Honorable Van Vogel.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, mine is on page 69. Entities. Let me just check. Yeah, page 69. The point of reference is if you look at point 7 with reference to note 20, the entity together
sorry,
with.
Sorry, member, may I interrupt, please? We have 4 documents. Which page 69, ma'am? Which one is it? Which entity?
Is it for the department, for the entity of the heritage, or the language committee, or? Okay, Honorable Van Vogel. Honorable Van Vogel. Look like we've lost Honorable Van Vogel there. Honorable Van Vogel.
She may be on mute, Chairperson.
Honorable Van Vogel. Look like we've lost Honorable Van Vogel. Can we just maybe give the department and the entities to respond in the meantime, and we'll get back to Honorable Van Vogel? At least time is still on our side.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. We will try and answer the list of questions. Let me just deal with the sexual harassment issue first, and then I will ask Colette if she can come in just in terms of the questions on Heritage Western Cape, the CFO, to answer the questions on preferential procurement and specifically the case, the forensic case. And then Jane, if she can answer the question on the language committee, just in terms of the key risk, and then whatever we've left out, we will follow up. But maybe just to say, the department has an extensive sexual harassment policy with sexual harassment officers. We can provide all that information to the committee chairperson. We will send all that information. Just to say that we had one case, one reported case in the year under review. A person was put on precautionary suspension. Hearing was held, and the person was found not guilty. So that's just in terms of the sexual harassment. Can I ask if Colette from Heritage Western Cape, if you can please deal with the questions related to Heritage Western Cape? Thank you, Colette.
Thank you, HOD, and good morning, committee. Thank you for the questions. I will try and, as HOD said, go through the questions, and if there's anything that I missed, you can point it out to me, and we'll come back to that. But I'll start with the questions around the key risks considered, with the question with regards to the loss of heritage resources and the details with regards to that. I just want to preface my response by saying, in terms of the National Heritage Resources Act, which is the legislation that governs the management of heritage resources in the province and also the mandate of HWC, there is a section that identifies or is a mechanism for identifying the type of heritage resources in the country, which basically says that any building older than 60 years, which is essentially an identifying trigger, falls under the general protections of the Heritage Resources Act. Similarly, there are general protections for archaeology and paleontology, and there are general protections for burial grounds and graves. So there's general protections that govern what is covered under the protection of heritage resources. And I must say to the committee, it is quite a vast sum of heritage resources, and it is not possible for an authority to know or to have a database of all its heritage resources. What we have in the province is a database of identified and declared heritage resources. So it's important to make that distinction, because when we talk about loss of heritage resources, it's usually under the net of heritage resources that have yet to be identified and heritage resources that is not formally protected. And that is usually comes to light or is reported to HWC during building processes, or if there's an accidental discovery of an archaeological site, or there's a disturbance of a grave. So it's usually a reactive process when it comes to that. Now, this particular risk is really an inherent risk in the management of heritage resources. And what as HWC we have done in terms of our action plans and the way we're mitigating it is to say to ourselves, although this is an inherent risk in the mandate of HWC and the work that we do, what are the action plans and the mitigations we can put in place to bring this risk within our tolerance level? So in other words, you can never know the full extent of the resources across the breadth and length of the province, but we can put in certain mitigations in place to try and stem the flow and try and identify important or significant resources that we can formally protect and keep a better eye on. So there's that process that we're doing. In terms of our action plans, we have been dealing, and this is where I want to make the point about the local authorities. We've looked at handing over delegations to local authorities to take on some of the management of heritage resources, because in terms of the Act, the legislation makes provision for local authorities to manage what we call grade 3 heritage resources at a local level. So we have, as HWC, been in the process of discussions with the City of Cape Town and Drakensberg municipality more recently to, first of all, be found competent to deal with heritage resources. In other words, they need to prove to us that they've got the resources, that they have the necessary committee in place, that there's a will to do so, that there's going to be a budget behind it, and that there's a long-term plan for them to take this on. Once they're found competent, then as an authority, we can look at what are the functions we can hand over to the local municipalities. So at this point in time, it's only COCT and Drakensberg where we are at a very advanced stage of discussions with the City of Cape Town. They have been found competent for certain sections of the legislation, and Drakensberg are basically putting together their application to HWC for competence. We met them in December to discuss this, and we are moving towards looking at the process of handing over functions to the City of Cape Town, but there are things that we need to understand in terms of processes and how applications are going to be processed before that's handed over. So once we do that, and also one of the things I need to mention is that in order to assist with this process, we developed an application form and guidelines to assist municipalities in terms of how they should apply to Heritage Western Cape for competence, because there was a lot of uncertainty around that as well. So we are trying to assist municipalities, and we've also in our outreach, so to speak, if you look at the performance section of the report, we have initiated not just discussions with the local municipalities, but with stakeholders as well, to start discussing, the implications of handing certain functions over, how municipalities can go about doing that, and also trying to do a general outreach to stakeholders across the board on the management of heritage resources. So it's been a multi-pronged approach in terms of dealing with the loss of heritage resources. With the City of Cape Town, we are hoping that in the very near future, I can't give exact timeframes, but we are, as I said, in a quite advanced stage of dealing with the delegations and handover. But that's one facet of how that can be dealt with. Now, in terms of loss of heritage resources that are reported to HWC, for example, where there is a building older than 60 years where they have developed without a permit and it's reported to us, we have a database where that goes into. There is then a follow-up process where applications have to be made. We can't, in terms of the legislation, permit retrospectively, but we do put them through a process where we as an entity can assess the damage to heritage resources and then determine what actions need to follow, and that is done through our committees. So there is then a record of the resource, a record of the damage to the resource, and a record of any mitigation that is followed. Yeah, so I think that covers that. I hope that is sufficient. Let me then now go on to the next one, which was, apologies, just looking at the key emerging risks. I think there was a comment on, sorry, I'm trying to find my notes. I had to write really, really fast.
Colette?
Yes, sir, HOD?
Maybe you can just deal with the issue of, there was a question in relation on how the committees are constituted. Because remember, we have various committees, you can deal with that. And then can you also deal with the question in relation to the conflict of interest? How do you deal with conflict of interest, what's the declaration process and so on?
Okay, so the committees are constituted through council. Council is established by the minister, and it is then council who then goes through a process of, there's a process of advertising, CVs are then garnered, and I must just point out that these are very technical committees. So for reference to, for this committee, I just want to point out that we've got a committee that deals with archaeology, paleontology, and meteorites. We've got a built environment committee. We have a committee that deals with impact assessment, so that's the big development type, Section 38 NEMA type process and DMR process applications. We have a committee that deals with inventories, grading, and interpretations. We also have a appeals committee, so decisions of these committees that are appealed will go to the appeals committee. And then we have what we call HOMs, which is the Heritage Officers meetings, and those are officials and seconded specialists to those committees, which council has delegated certain functions to the officials to make decisions. So the process is essentially for council to determine, based on the committees, what these skills requirements are. And obviously we are cognizant of the fact that there needs to be diversity, there needs to be representation in terms of the province. I think one of our biggest challenges with regards to setting up the committees is obviously getting a broad range of diversity and having people who are committed and who will stay for the course of the 3 years. So our committees are not exceptionally large committees, but for instance, if you look at a committee like Balcom, there are quite a few architects on Balcom, but they have different specialities that they focus on, and we have one or two others that deal with, for instance, historical archaeology, and very recently we've got someone in who deals with public consultation and stakeholder engagement, so to speak. So these are the technical functionalities that council will then assess in terms of putting the respective committees together, being obviously cognizant of the fact that there needs to be diversity, there needs to be, as far as possible, a representation across the province. Up until recently now, and I'm saying pre-COVID, we've had our meetings at our building in on Green Market Square. So obviously locality and access and being able to come to the meetings was also a factor, and the availability of committee members. But I must also stress that these committee members are also professionals in their own right, and I will touch on the issue of conflict of interest as I'm coming to that as well, is that they are professionals in their own right. Some of them are practicing, some of them are retired. I think by way of experience, we've also obviously felt that it's important to get committee members who are not that actively involved in their trade, so to speak. So in other words, we don't want committee members who have to constantly recuse themselves because their applications are coming before the respective committees. So we do take cognizance of that, but we do also understand that with that immediate experience comes the skills and the knowledge of the sector and the industry that we actually need on these committees to make the decisions. So it's a very fine balancing point that we have to make. And we're also cognizant of the fact that we don't want, we want a good spread of committee members in the sense of ensuring that there's younger people that come in, there can be a handover of skills and experience, and some younger folks getting exposure to these committees and being able to also contribute from their young professional perspective, and also then having some sort of build-up of experience where committees can continue. Because the point with the committees is that in terms of appointments, members can serve for as many terms as council appoints them, should they be nominated and they accept. And continuity and experience is really vital for HWC in order to make sound decisions. And so then when these committees make decisions coming to the conflict of interest, and because I'd indicated that some of them are practicing in their field and some of them do submit applications to HWC, we do have a code of conduct. We do have a process where members at the start of each meeting must declare their conflict of interest on an item. When they've indicated their conflict of interest, which is minuted for the record, that person is then recused from the meeting. So when the item comes up, they have to leave the meeting. Now, because we do it virtually, they have to physically excuse themselves out of the MS Teams meeting. Where there is a recusal, if there are members of the public who are part of the discussions, they are informed that the certain committee member will be recusing themselves for the meeting, and they will then leave. If they are part of an application and they are representing a client, this will be explained, and they will only be allowed in as far as they're representing the client sitting on the other side, obviously, to answer technical questions, but after which they have to excuse themselves. So that is made very clear from the beginning. I hope that covers the assurance on the conflict of interest, but we do also, I must stipulate, have a legal advisor who sits in on all our committee meetings, who often advises where she thinks the committee needs to, where there's clarity needed on issues of conflict of interest. And there have been many instances where members themselves have asked, should I be recusing myself for this? This has been my involvement in the previous project a few years ago, and we then get legal advice before the matter is formally tabled. That we do at the very start of the meeting during our admin sessions. So I think from a legal point of view, we have been diligent to cover that in all our agendas of all our meetings. I trust that covers that. Is there anything else that I need to still go back to HOD?
No, I think that's fine for now, Colette. We'll come back to you if we need to. Could
Okay.
I ask that Jane just deals with the question of the functioning of the Western Cape Cultural Commission in terms of COVID-19? It has had an impact on our facilities. If Jane can deal with that, and then after that, if the CFO can deal with the question on the BBBEE compliance issue and preferential procurement, and on the issue of the case that is mentioned. Can we go in that order, please? Jane first.
Okay. Good morning, Chairperson and members, Minister and the HOD. HOD, I'm going to deal with the questions that is posed for the public entity. The one is on the key risk pertaining to our ability to continue and recover its business during and after COVID-19 pandemic. Just to say to the committee is that currently what we've put in place is that for both the entities, because that question was asked for the language committee and for the cultural committee, which is the same risk, we are having all our meetings virtually. In terms of the Western Cape Cultural Commission's responsibility pertaining to the facilities, in the first part of COVID-19, our facilities was isolation and quarantine sites. Thereafter, we have deep cleaned all our facilities. We have also set up a plan to comply with COVID-19, which is that only 50% of our space can be, or of the space at the facilities can be accommodated. What we've then done is that we've moved all the beds out of the sleeping quarters so that it comply with the 50%. All our facilities have PPEs. Our staff has been informed, and also we have shared with our staff what is required at the facilities. We haven't had many groups using our facilities. Thus far, we only had one during the COVID after alert level 1. During alert level 3, we only had one group, but we have complied to all of those COVID regulations for the facilities. We have taken temperatures of the group that have attended. We've taken the details, etc. So in summary, we have looked at the COVID regulation specifications, and we have ensured that all our facilities comply to that. So that is pertaining to COVID and our virtual meetings that we have. The other question that was asked was a question around the newly elected committees, that is for the Western Cape Cultural Commission, which is on page 39. One of the members asked that question, that the newly elected committee or accounting authority may not have the required skills. Just to say to the committee that the members on the Western Cape Cultural Commission are not full-time members, and therefore they might not have the skills required to manage all the aspects of the Cultural Commission. For argument's sake, they might not have the required skill and competency to manage risk, for argument's sake. Some might not have financial management skills. What we then do as the department is that we provide the necessary support for those members on the committee. We assist them with all of the specific responsibilities as pertaining to the Western Cape Cultural Commissions Act. So the department is the administrative support to the committee, and therefore we ensure that compliance takes place in that respect. The question pertaining to the Cultural Commission as the accounting authority, that was also asked. In 2019, the internal audit undertook internal audit unit undertook an audit on the management of the cultural facilities. The department's attention was then drawn to who the accounting authority should be. Should it be an official within the department, or the accounting authority, or the the entity themselves. The department then consulted with legal services in the previous office, and we received legal opinion from the legal services unit, which stated that the committee, the Western Cape Cultural Commission, is a juristic person, and therefore they are responsible for the committee because they can be sued or sue. And secondly, in terms of the PFMA, the Cultural Commission is listed as a Schedule 3C committee according to the PFMA. And therefore, the opinion was that the Cultural Commission is the accounting authority for the Western Cape Cultural Commission, because they operate independently from the department, and that within and amongst the members within that Cultural Commission, they can only delegate within and amongst. So it cannot be delegated outside of the Western Cape Cultural Commission. For argument's sake, they cannot delegate any responsibility to me as a director or to Mr. Redman as a chief director. And therefore, we operate within that legal framework, that the Cultural Commission is now the accounting authority for the Cultural Commission. We then carried on with the administrative support and guidance that we provide to the Cultural Commission. So that is pertaining that question. The last question pertaining to the summer initiation season, as we all know that as from lockdown 1, initiation schools or the operation for initiation schools are prohibited. We then communicated to all of our initiation forums, which are 34 initiation forums, and we've also circulated to all of them the section that relates to the fact that initiation schools are prohibited. What level, when we've moved to level 1, initiation, the operation of initiation schools was still prohibited. We had again consulted with all the initiation forums, and currently we in the process, we have designed a roadmap for training, so that when the initiation schools open, all of our custodians are then trained on COVID preventative measures. We are also in consultation with the Department of Health, which is giving us guidance on that aspect. Lastly, Minister has also made a public announcement after the discussion in Cabinet that initiation is prohibited in the province. A week ago, Minister has again put out a media statement to remind our custodians that initiation and the communities that initiation is prohibited. Within that statement, we have also then put out our roadmap for the training and the preparation for when the schools are going to open. So thank you, HOD and Chairperson.
Thank you, Jane. Can I hand over to the CFO, please?
Thank you, HOD, and good morning, Chair and members. So I'm going to respond to the first one, is on page 139, which was asked by Member Bonds, and that was with regards to the PFS case. So the the underlying reasons for the case was alleged theft, bribery, and procurement irregularities, and that happened within the library services. So it was handed over to PFS that did the investigation, but they could not confirm any of the allegations, and the case was closed subsequently to the investigation. Then on page 141, there was a question on this, a scope resolution under the portfolio committees. So Member Barnes, just to clarify, that relates to the hearing that we attended in May last year. So it was a resolution raised in relation to the previous year's annual report, and we basically addressed that with the standing or with SCOPA. So just to give you an indication and to summarize, so it all emanated from internal control deficiencies. So there was no fraud or any funny things related to that. One of the cases were, for example, the gym track, who was the service provider that was appointed transversally to provide equipment and attire to us. So they did not comply with the local content issue, and therefore we had to raise it as an issue, as in terms of irregular expenditure. But like I said, we have presented those challenges to the committee on the 22nd of May 2020. Then with regards to BBBE, so there was a question from both Member Barnes and Member Kama. So I'm going to address both questions at the same time. So basically, it is exactly the same thing. So what has happened was that Provincial Treasury basically championed the development and implementation of the preferential procurement policy. So unfortunately, they had a number of challenges, and therefore they could not implement the policy. So to answer your question, whether we are in compliance, no, we are not. As a province, we are not compliant to the policy. However, Provincial Treasury has come up with two strategies. One was the supply chain management governance requirements, right, which they then incorporated via the Provincial Treasury instructions, which we then as a department incorporated into our AOS, which is our accounting officer system. And that is basically what is guiding procurement within the department. In addition to that, the Department of Economic Development and Tourism also developed an economic procurement policy, which has been drafted and finalized, and it's ready for implementation, but not yet implemented at this point. So even though the policy has not been developed, we have to give effect to the Act, the PPPFA, which is the Act, and as well as the Broad-Based Economic Development Act. So basically, we give effect to the requirements of the Act through our AOS, our accounting officer system. So to that extent, we then ensure that we evaluate the preference points. So basically, we are compliant in terms of the requirement to evaluate the preference points when we do our procurement.
CFO, you done?
Yeah, I think that covers the questions that was in my area.
So there are just two outstanding matters, Chair, before we hand back to you. I think the one was a question just in relation to how do we ensure, how does the enterprise ensure that there is attendance, and how do we track attendance, how do we ensure that members attend? So in all, obviously, as far as the department is concerned, we have formal notification, and that could apply to the committees as well. And then I know that in the heritage situation, Colette can also add, but I know that we track that attendance, and if members do not attend when they're supposed to, they obviously then send notices and reminders to be able to attend. But I think in the heritage case, if Colette can come in, because there's that question on the attendance was asked in relation to heritage, and then also there was the issue about the possibility that the committee can take decisions at the ultra vires. So Colette, if you can just address yourself to those two, please. Thank you. And I think we've covered all.
Thank you, HOD. Yes, just to add what you are saying, at the start of the term of every council and its committees, there is a schedule, so it's 3-year term, and we develop a schedule of meeting dates for all the committee meetings and for all meetings of council. Now, sometimes they are subject to change due to operational requirements, but those dates are then approved and set down as dates that we would be diarized over the 3 years. So committee members and council members are appraised of the dates from early on at the start of their term, so that they are able to be available. And also we have a secretariat that sends out reminders 2 weeks before the meetings. We ensure that we core it. We ensure that if there is a conflict of interest, that they need to note that, so that we ensure that should 1 or 2 members have to recuse themselves, that we're not sitting with an issue of quorum issues. So we manage that through our secretariat system and ensure that with our RSVPs and notification of our agendas ahead of the meetings, that members are able to indicate if they have to recuse themselves for items and also if they are available. And that has helped a tremendous amount, particularly getting the schedule of dates of meetings out well ahead of time. And then with regards to the issue of potentially making decisions that could be ultra vires, I think that is a risk that we've looked at, particularly in the context of a new council and committees. While these are technically proficient professionals in their field, getting to understand the nuances of the heritage law and any other laws that apply and how these committees need to make their decisions is something that we felt that needs careful guidance and scrutiny throughout the term of council. But also what we do is that at the start of council, we do have an induction process. We do also provide an induction for the various committees, but we have also, as I said earlier on, we have a legal advisor who is present at, and a legal assistant who is present at all our committee meetings and our meetings of council. So our legal advisor provides guidance and provides oversight when it comes to the technical correctness of decisions that are made. So we have that legal oversight. We also, in terms of the ultra vires, what's important in terms of the quorums is obviously to make sure that when a decision is made, that there is a quorum of members to make that decision, so that we avoid making a decision without quorum. And then lastly, there is also a technical remedy to this in terms of it legally, where should there be an instance, and this has happened very, very rarely in the time that I've also been at HWC, should there be an instance where there is an incorrect decision by a committee, there are 2 appeals processes that can then remedy the incorrect decision that has been made. One is within HWC's appeals process. So if it's, for instance, a BALCOM that has made a decision that is not correct, it can then be appealed and rectified at the appeals. If that is not sufficient, then there is another step which sits with the ministerial tribunal, which is an independent appeals tribunal, which can then remedy that. So while we do have that, we do try and mitigate the possibility of making any illegal decisions very early on, and that is very tightly overseen by our legal advisor and our legal assistant for all our committees.
Thank you very much, Colette. Chairperson, we've answered all the questions. Let me hand back to you.
Thanks very much, HOD. Honorable Barnes.
Chairperson?
Yes, Honorable Barnes.
Okay, just checking if I'm audible. If I'm allowed, Chair, just one clarification on a question that I've asked earlier with regards to BEE. When the department responded now, there was a part that I got a bit lost at when they said that tourism was assisting in procurement policy but not yet implemented. Can I just be clarified as to when is the department going to make use of the policy that tourism is assisted them, in case I lost them or got them wrongly? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Barnes. Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much, Chair. With the question of the decision that the committee can take, I'm just wondering maybe if I can get more clarity, because to me, with the explanation that we got, everything is in place and the entity is taking proactive measures, the legal advice and the appeals and everything. But I'm just failing to understand why it should be the key emerging risk for the following financial year, whilst with the explanation it says that it won't be something that there's a possibility that it can be the key emerging risk. It's something that maybe I'm missing in the track of the explanation that it can be. I do understand with the COVID-19 that we are still struggling to get a grip as and when. But for the decisions of the council and the committees, like it's a blank check of when it's listed here that it's acceptable that something like that can happen. Already we have listed it, then we will deal with it. But it might be we won't be able to solve the problem of the decision that would have been taken. So it's a little bit dicey to me that I can't get a grip of reading between the lines of what is it that it means by the decisions of the committee of the council being as a key emerging risk. That's my concern, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maseko. Honorable members, are there any further questions? If there is no further question on section C, when the department has finished answering or the entities finish answering, we will move to section E. Thanks very much, Mr. Walters.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. CFO, can you deal with the question of Member Barnes, just in terms of that the policy, and then Colette, can I ask you and to just try and address the question of Member Maseko, please? Just to maybe just say before the answer. So the thing with emerging risks is that we identify in the reportings that potentially could become issues. So it's just an early warning. That's why you actually have an emerging risk. And it means we haven't, it may not mean that the risk is realized. I just want to make that point. It just means that potentially there could be an issue and we need to take mitigation. Just wanted to make that point, but can I hand to CFO, please, and then to Colette.
Thank you, HOD. So, Member Barnes, just to clarify, so that is a strategy that was developed in consultation with Provincial Treasury, the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, and the Department of the Premier. So basically, it's been drafted and that is for the entire province. So one part of it has already been implemented, and that has to do with the regionalized procurement. So in our department, for example, we are in the process of ensuring regionalized procurement with regards to our preferred list of catering. And the whole, the essence of the regionalized procurement is basically to ensure local economic development. So that is what we are moving towards. But just to clarify, the policy, again, the policy has been drafted, not yet fully implemented. They have started with the regionalized procurement at this point. Okay, so we basically guided by Provincial Treasury in terms of the implementation, because they normally champion implementation, and then departments will follow.
Thank you, CFO. Colette?
Thank you, HOD. Yes, I think you've also prefaced my response a bit, and to note the context within which we highlighted this is around the possibility that there is a risk that exists. And the reason for this is that we had a transition of councils and committees at the end of October, beginning of November 2019. And with that transition of new committees and council, it was thought that could there potentially be a risk in terms of decision making, particularly when you're dealing with new committees who have to be, who have to be given some context with regards to how decisions are made in terms of the NHRA. So it really was looking at what are the possibilities of incorrect legal decisions being made, particularly within the context of a new council and new committees. But the discussion was around the possibility. As HOD said, it doesn't mean that we're saying it is. It will be a reality. We're looking at the possibility, particularly around where new councils and new committees take on and transition.
Thank you, Colette. Chairperson, let us hand back to you.
Thank you very much, HOD. I think then, honorable members, in the absence of further question on section C, I would like us now to move to section E of the report of the department, as well as the report of the entities, which is the financial section of the report. I see Honorable Barnes, Honorable Kama, in that order. In that order, honorable members. Honorable Barnes.
Thank you, Chairperson. My first question to the department is with regards to the land lawsuit claim on page 182, the uncertainty relating to the future outcome of the litigation on regulatory action. What I want to know, Chairperson, is that what are the details and the update of this lawsuit? How much has been spent on it? And what was the interest of the department in the land claim? My second question, Chair, will be on page 190, transfers and subsidies. What I want to know under the provinces and municipalities, what are the transfers to the municipalities for? Does the department transfer funds for maintenance of sports recreation facilities? If not, why not? My second question on page 202, also under the transfers and subsidies, now province and municipalities, what are the conditions attached to these transfers, and whether there is any possibility of increasing the amount to ensure adequate sports and culture development in various municipalities, especially in the poor communities? That's what I want to check, Chair. On page 232, under the transaction in financial assets and liabilities, under that box, there's previous financial year's expenditure recovered in the current financial year. With regards to unspent allocations, Chair, of development and sport and recreation, facilities and municipalities, what were the reasons given for this, and what mechanisms are put in place for the department to ensure that these funds are fully allocated? Now, Chair, my last question to the department on this one will be on page 253, under heritage assets. DCAS is responsible for the Western Cape Archives and Record Services. Who is responsible for the collection, management, and preservation of records that form part of our archival holding? What I want to know, Chair, is that are there any notable records from liberation heroes or sports legends worth highlighting? If so, what value is attached to them? My last question, Chair, goes to the entity under heritage on page 69. Uncertainty relating to the future outcome of exceptional litigation or regulatory action. With reference to note 20, the entity together with other entities are the defendants in land claim lawsuit. The ultimate outcome of the matter could not be determined, and no provision of any liability that may result was made in the financial statements. Chair, what are the details and updates of this lawsuit? Reading it with the first question that I've asked earlier. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Barnes. Honorable Kama.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question, Chair, will be on the department on page 248. If we look at the top box that is there, which starts with the decrease due to one official resigning during the year under review. No, sorry, in the department, sorry, Chair, for that. 248 on the box on top, where it talks about that the department has assessed the impact of COVID-19 pandemic that resulted in a country lockdown. No further reporting of information in the 2019 AFS is deemed material due to COVID-19, and it continues to list the other stolen items. Now, what I want to check, Chair, is where all the stolen items recovered, were there any criminal cases opened, and what work has been done to improve security at the department centers across all municipalities? On the same page, Chair, on the movable tangible capital assets under investigation, it says assets that were not found during 2019 and 20 annual asset verification is in the process of being further investigated by the by the department. What are the details of the missing assets? And one question that I have is on the cultural commission, page 75, when it talks about the employee costs service in kind. This is where it talks about the decrease due to one official resigning during the year under review. If perhaps we can get the reasons for the resignation on page 77 of the same entity, on the debt impairment. It says during the current year, a provision was made for doubtful debt. This is related to non-payment of outstanding accounts. Can we get more details on the debt impairment and the non-paying users? If you can get more detail around that. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, Honorable.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Mine is on page 240. Point of reference is the increase in damaged vehicles. My question there is, what I want to know, what are the details of the damage of vehicles and how did the accident occur and what remedial action has been taken? And then if we move to page 242, the point of reference there is, there are 4 pillar cases under investigation which were not finalized by the department. So what I want to know there is, are the details and update on the cases and why were these not finalized? Then on the same page, Chair, the point of reference there is outcome of the determination test was referred to Provincial Treasury. So what I want to know there, has the department received updates on the outcome of the determination test referred to the Treasury? If so, what are the relevant details? Then the last one, Chairperson, is on page 251. The minor capital assets under investigation. What are the details of the missing assets and what is the update on that? Thank you so much, Chair.
Department and entities.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. I think we will try to answer the questions as best as we can. Maybe we must start with the heritage question, just in terms of the land claim and the case, and any other questions heritage can answer. And then I'm going to hand over to the CFO. And then I also would like, once the CFO has dealt with the questions, if the sport and recreation section can speak about the questions related to transfers and subsidies, and that will be London. And then if Cecilia can answer the questions in relation to the libraries, the break-ins, and whether we recovered items and so on. But let me start with Colette, and then we work away from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, HOD. Just with regards to, so under note in the department's Sorry, I was just not sure if it was in reference to HWC's section or the departments, but since they are both covered, I can speak to that. So the cases involving Midnight Storm, HWC is the third defendant, the MEC is the fifth defendant in the case. Essentially, the landowners of the property has taken the HWC and the department to court. The case is lodged in the North Gauteng High Court, and they've basically argued expropriation of their rights as they feel that the formal declaration of the site has essentially stripped them of their rights to develop as they had intended to. They felt that the decision of HWC not to approve the planned upmarket housing development, the rezoning and the subdivision rights of the property, because it is a provincial heritage site, has effectively limited their right to develop to the extent that it can be argued that it's constructive expropriation. The trial was held in 2019 with concluding arguments in January 2020. However, the court did rule in favor of HWC and said that there's no merit with regards to the argument for constructive expropriation. The plaintiff then applied for leave to appeal, and that leave to appeal was granted, but the date for the appeal has yet to be set down. Hence, the case is yet to be concluded. I trust that's sufficient, HOD.
Thank you very much, CFO.
Thank you, HOD. So I'm going to start off with let's see. The Western Cape Cultural Commission, which was a question asked by member Kama. So on page 175, the issue around employee cost and the reason for the resignation. So basically, this was one of our bookkeepers, excuse me, that decided to resign because she wanted to spend more time with the kids and the family, and she was going to, find a half-time job. So that was the reason basically for the resignation. The debt impairment in the Western Cape Cultural Commission, that it relates to debts for camps. So our policy currently indicates that payments must be received upfront, which in the main happens. But we do have instances where schools or groups, they would arrive and let's say they have booked for 30 people and then they come with maybe 35 people or 35 children. So obviously we won't turn them away and we then just raise the debt afterwards, which they then pay afterwards. However, it has been difficult, and the reason why we are impairing it is because we are intending to write those debtors off in the next financial year if we are unable to recover those debtors. Okay, then there was a question on major assets. So I'm going to deal both. One was on assets under investigation for major assets, and the other one was for minor assets. And members wanted to know the details. So basically, what happens when we do our asset verification, right? So once we are unable to verify, those are then put on what we call a missing list. And after the verification, it's handed over to the internal control unit, who will then go and do the investigation. Unfortunately, so this has to do with the 1920 assets under investigation. So unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we were not able to finalize the investigations in this respect. But maybe just to give you an indication, and historically, we are able to find, because what happens when we do the verification, there is no time to really look for assets. So when it indicates on the asset register that it is in room A, we go to room A, we can't find it there, we move on to the next one. Should we find that particular asset in room B, we will then tick it. But if not, so in other words, we don't have time to really search for it. And what we have found historically is once we start doing the investigation, we actually find it, because what people tend to do, and I mean, we're dealing with humans, they will maybe move a boardroom chair into an office, for example. So basically, we tend to find most of the the assets. So just to give you an indication of what is on the list. So we've got, for example, a book trolley. Obviously, it's a mobile thing, so it's most probably one of the other stores. Then we've got scanners. We've got workstation computer, monitors. So those are basically the type of assets. So it's assets that's used by officials, and it's highly likely that, for example, when they move workstation, they take that computer with to the other workstation. So basically, it's really just going into it and then finding it and then correcting it on the asset register. Damaged vehicles. Then there was a question around the determination test for the irregular expenditure. So that was referred to Provincial Treasury. So I think it was in April 2019, we received a revised irregular expenditure framework, which then required for the Provincial Treasury to approve or to condone irregular expenditure. Previously, it was done by the department. And because it was something new and Treasury still needed to get their heads around it, they in fact only started to establish the committee that will be looking at irregular expenditure about 6 months ago. So at this point, we have not received our cases back in terms of the outcome. We are still waiting for that. Then there was a question on damaged vehicles and apologies.
Sorry, Chief, I was just going to say damaged vehicles, page 240.
Yeah. Question on damaged vehicles. So basically with the damaged vehicles, those are officials obviously that use GG Transport, and then, you know, they find themselves in all different situations. Either they bump a car or they stand and someone bump into them. So we've got a process that we follow in that respect. We will assess what the issue is, and this is where my internal control will facilitate the investigation and to determine whether we should hold the official liable for the cost or whether we can write off. So generally, we involve the state attorney, who will then advise whether the official has lost his or her cover. In other words, so they will check whether there is an approved trip authority, and if so, in many cases, then they would advise to write it off, because obviously it happened, you know, while the person was doing his or her work, the person had a trip authority, and therefore we would generally write that off. However, in the cases where we do find that there were negligence, we actually recover the money from the officials. Actually, I'm not sure, did I cover all my areas? Are there any outstanding?
Covered, CFO. If you missed out, we can come back at the end.
Okay.
Thank you very much, CFO. Lyndon, can I ask, we go in this order? Lyndon, you go first on the questions of transfers in the sport and the questions on sport and recreation. Then Cecilia will answer on the losses and so on at the libraries, the stolen items. Then after that, Namaza, there was a question that I missed in relation to records in the archive. If you can maybe just talk about that. And then Sean, if you can deal with the 4 pillar cases. Thank you, in that order. Start with Lyndon. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairperson, members, colleagues. Firstly, in terms of our transfers, we have transfers to federations, sport and recreation federations, as well as to municipalities. Both transfers are dealt with on an application basis. We send out forms to all the municipalities. In this year, for instance, we sent out the forms on the 1st of July, and between 1 July and 30 September, municipalities had an opportunity to send us applications with business plans, etc., to us as the department. We would then consider that and then make a determination once we know what the budget is for the following financial year. The budget for transfers to municipalities is reasonably small. It's only about 1.5 to 2 million, depending on the year, and that is because the facilities in the municipalities, such as local stadia and other sport facilities, are actually owned by the municipality in terms of Schedule 5A and B of the Constitution. DCAS as a department does not pay for maintenance of facilities. We only assist with the upgrade or construction of facilities. So we work very closely with the MIG office that is situated in local government. Municipalities generally apply to MIG for their big projects, for their sport and recreation projects, and our officials then come in to ensure that the projects are within the norms and standards that have been laid down by the National Sport Department. It is we then make sure that whatever service provider then does the rugby poles, netball or soccer fields, whatever it may be, that it is in line with existing standards so that league matches can be played and that it can then be accredited in that regard. So all the funding for municipalities is on an application basis, and we then consider that, and we then engage with the municipalities to hear what they have to say, how they're going to do it, etc. Then in terms of the federations apply every year for funding. Federations must be a member of the local sport council of wherever they are located in their district. And based on their application, if they are a member, the sport council will endorse the application. And we then have meetings with all these applicants in January and February each year, in which we assess their capability, also what they intend to do with the funds. At a given stage then in March, we do the allocation once we receive the budget from the provincial treasury. So that is our transfers to federations and municipalities. And we have a regular once the allocation is done, we then would have a check handover ceremony where the actual documents such as the memoranda of agreement are signed. And once those are signed, they have to ensure that regular reports are given to us. In terms of the municipalities, they have to give us quarterly reports, and our officials then monitor the quarterly reports and the progress. And in terms of the federations, they've got to give us 2 reports per annum in terms of what they have done with their funding. So that is in the main the funding for the transfer funding for federations and municipalities that we are involved in. Thank you, HOD.
Thank you very much, London. Let's go to Cecilia.
Good morning, Chairperson and members. Thank you, HOD. Yes, I will start off by talking about the transfers. So we do transfers to the municipalities. There's 2 main funds. The one is the Municipal Replacement Fund. That's to B3 municipalities, 15 of them. And that's mostly for staff and basic operations like photocopying paper, ink, stationery, and so on. And then we also do the conditional grant transfers to municipalities, and that is to all municipalities. That's mostly COE, and then it also includes infrastructure, which is the building of new libraries and the maintenance of existing libraries. Then I think it was on page 232, which you asked the City of Cape Town, the 4 million rand that was returned. That was conditional grant funds for compensation of employees that wasn't used that year, which was mostly vacancies. Then regarding the security and the break-ins, none of the items were recovered that was stolen. We provide the computers initially to the municipality, and then they insure it, so they're responsible for the replacing of the computers. So all of the computers have been replaced already, and the security in the various libraries have been upgraded differently. So with some, there's just been burglar bars that's been placed in front of the windows that were broken into, and with others, security have been appointed, 24-hour security. So the cost for those is the responsibility of the municipalities. And then just to talk about the minor assets that you were asking about, the losses, those are books. Every year we write off books that have been lost by the various municipalities and users. Our losses at the moment is about 1.2% of our collection. The norm for libraries is up to about 5%. So we are managing it. We give municipalities 12 months to look for the books before it is then written off. But these are then just books mostly lost by users or lost in the library. I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. Namaza, the archives.
Thank you, HOD. Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members. In terms of the information on liberation and sport heroes, I cannot now come up with an exact list, but what I can say is that there are court cases, for example, before 1980s related to liberation heroes or liberation movements that we have in the archives, but we can definitely provide that information. But just also to say, we are working because as the archives, we're also working with other institutions because of what was happening before 1996, where we were a regional office of the National Archives, and most of information was deposited in the National Archives. So we do have a national database, the National Automated Archival Database, where when we search for information, we can have that information available. We also work closely with My Buya Center at UWC, where they have information on the specifically on the liberation heroes. Just also maybe to mention, to say, we have been struggling as the archives to receive records because of the inadequate space that we have. So it's something that we've been dealing with the Department of Transport and Public Works to get an extension to our building so that we can have all these records that are of great importance and archival value. But we haven't been winning in that regard. Just also to maybe talk to the issue of attaching value, and the reason why maybe the note was there and it was also in detail. The HSA wanted to look at archival or heritage assets as assets that can be attached value. And we had a lot of discussions, and we also made reference to the South African Heritage Resources Act, and we then agreed with the HSA that we are unable to put value on archival heritage because of the heritage value that it has, but we can't put monetary value in it. So all the records that we have in the archives, we cannot attach monetary value to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Namaza. The last question, Sean, it was about the 4 pillar cases. You can please answer that.
Thank you, HOD. Morning, Chairperson and members. Just the detail on the 4 pillar cases. So pillar temporary incapacity.
Sean, we can't hear you, a little bit soft.
Apologies, HOD. Let me just speak up.
Thank
can
you.
You hear me better now?
Much better. Thank you, sir.
So the 4 cases that was referred to is 4 people that applied for temporary incapacity leave after their sick leave credit has been exhausted. And initially the requests were declined, and after a grievance procedure, it was finalized and all 4 cases was approved and implemented. So those cases have been finalized in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Chairperson, it has hand back to you. Thank you, sir.
Chair, you just need to unmute yourself.
Oh, apologies. Just wanted to check, honorable members, are there any follow-ups? In the absence of follow-ups, honorable members, let's see, the audit committee, are there any comments you'd like to make?
Mr. Chair, once again, we'd just like to congratulate the department on an excellent performance, the department and its entities. We have highlighted to the MEC, to the accounting officer and his team, and this morning to SCOPA, of some of the emerging risks that we'd request the department to take heed of. And especially of concern is the transition, where the accounting officer is moving departments. And we as the audit committee are on standby to assist in any which way we can. Thank you very much to the Minister and to the accounting officer for the sterling work that you people have done.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Audit Committee. AG.
Chair, from our side, just thank you to the department and the entities for their support and assistance during the audit process. And we want to encourage them to continue the drive of clean administration and the preventative controls. And we look forward to the audit process for the next cycle. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks, AG. HOD.
No, thank you, Chairperson. I think we note those comments and words of encouragement as well. And yeah, I think we obviously, as I indicated in the opening remarks, we take oversight as a very important thing. We take clean administration as a very important thing, and we track that in the department. We are on top of it. And I do know that the chairperson of the audit committee expressed the issue about the emerging risks. I do not believe, I think it is obviously, it's a potential. I think the fact is that we have a good set of officials in this department, chairperson. They're very experienced in their jobs and very committed. And I'm confident that the department will go forward and upward. Thank you very much, chairperson.
Thanks very much, HOD. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to say thank you so much for the manner in which you conduct this committee and also to the members. And then, if I'm correct, I think this is the last SCOPA meeting with our HOD. He's moving to education. I just want to wish him well. And thank you to our department. Keep well.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Thanks very much, Honorable Minister. Now, if there is also no further comments, honorable members, from the members of the committee, let me make use of this opportunity to firstly thank the department led by the Honorable Minister and the HOD and the relevant staff that are supporting them. Thank you very much for making the time to come and answer and appear in front of the committee. I know some of the questions might be a bit awkward for you or difficult, but rest assured that there is no intention to try and trick you or catch you up, but we are just trying to fulfill our role and responsibility of being the committee, working together with the other members of the legislature, the committee that is supposed to hold everybody in Parliament accountable. We thank you very much for your cooperation as well, right through the process. Thank you very much. And also to the audit committee, your continued support and your continued cooperation in making sure that our life of making all who's supposed to be accountable, you actually making it easy for us. Thank you very much. And to the Auditor General for being always available and be a dependable ally in this drive of accountability. Thank you very much. Are there, Mr. Procedural Officer, any members of the public who have indicated that they would like to ask questions?
Chairperson, no members of the public indicated that they want to engage the department and the committee this morning.
Okay, I see Honorables Ayanda Pan's hand is up, or is that the previous hand?
Apologies, Chair. That was from the previous questions I asked. Apologies for that.
No problem, Honorable Member. So, Honorable Member, now that means that our session now with the department and the audit committee and the auditor general has come to an end. We will continue as the committee and other members of the provincial legislature to finalize the business of the committee. So we'll therefore excuse the auditor general, the department, as well as the audit committee, so that we can continue with the business of the committee together with other members of the provincial legislature. So you can be excused.
Thank you, Honourable.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Honourable members.
Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable
Thank you very much.
Chair, and the
Bye-bye.
rest of the honourable members.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, there we are, honorable members. Now, honorable members, the purposes of us continuing with the business is to try and see if are there any resolution that we would like to propose for adoption by the committee in view of the report that we have received. Honorable Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to propose the request, a briefing, not a briefing, a note, a written note from the department based on page 260 on the details of the amounts spent as well as the unspent money regarding Laingsburg municipality in its conditional grant. Thank you.